I have seen her at protests. I've seen her at funerals. I've seen detailed tattoos of her. I've seen her on the hood of a lowrider car. Sometimes she sits crumpled up on an old prayer card beside a candle. Other times, there are beautiful mosaics of her landscaped across churches. I've always found her brown skin, dark hair, and gorgeous veil captivating. La Virgen de Guadalupe is truly iconic, no pun intended. And just like our church, she is a global presence. Images of her are not just found in Mexico City. In my travels, I've seen murals of La Virgen de Guadalupe at the U.S.-Mexico border wall in El Paso, Texas, which some might expect, but I've also seen images of her in Northern Ireland and even in my trip to the West Bank. While I mostly associate her with being the patron saint of Mexico, it made sense to me that despite the West Bank and Northern Ireland not being predominantly Mexican, images of her would show up there. As the story goes, La Virgen de Guadalupe appeared to Juan Diego, an indigenous man, and asked him to build a shrine on the spot where she had appeared. But the local bishop, upon hearing this, said he needed a sign that La Virgen had actually appeared to Juan Diego before he would agree to build a church. La Virgen appeared again, showing Juan Diego where to pick roses. Putting these roses in his cloak, he went before the bishop and opened his cloak to show him the roses. Dozens of roses fell to the floor, and an image of La Virgen appeared on his cloak. And the church was built. It's a shortened version, but you get the point. Understanding this story is crucial to understanding why images of La Virgen show up where they do today. First off, out of all of the people she could have chosen to appear to, she chose someone indigenous. At this time, a lay indigenous person would have little to no power compared to a bishop. And yet, Juan Diego was the chosen messenger. But his words were not enough. He needed a miracle to change the mind of those in power. And it's true that words are often not enough to change power structures, even if they should be. Instead, it usually takes action and or a miracle is needed to convince those with power to take seriously the requests of those without it. This is why images of La Virgen de Guadalupe have shown up at protests for farm worker rights in the U.S., or for peace in Gaza and Los Angeles, and at the U.S. border, because she represents what those like Juan Diego who are most vulnerable to violence know. It takes the faith that Juan Diego had in La Virgen to trust that a peaceful and more just future is on the horizon. La Virgen did not choose the bishop as her messenger. She chose Juan Diego, meaning that if you were to reimagine that story today, it is clear who she would choose as her messenger and who would need a miracle to believe in her. Second, the intentional choice of roses is not to be overlooked. Roses are usually associated with the feminine, but they are also non-violent. She could have told Juan Diego to find a sword or a hammer or even some sort of theological tool, but the fact that a man with no power showed up with roses and changed the mind of the bishop, this is huge. On this feast day, and with today's readings, we see time and time again average people being demanded to do the impossible, sometimes, if not always, with only their faith. But as we look around the world, we see that sometimes it's people's faith that is the only tool at their disposal for change. In this season of waiting, may we not lose hope of the good news that is to come.